Breaking news, the Supreme Court has ruled to limit the Voting Rights Act. The case focused on whether states can use race and consider race when redrawing congressional maps. Now the decision could reduce the influence of minority voters, and questions are growing about what it will mean for the future of voting in America. ABC News legal contributor James Sample and ABC's Devin Dwyer are here to break it all down. James, the court ruled 6-3 here in favor of the voters who challenged adding this second a majority black congressional district. So how did the court reach this decision?
Well, Diane, you're right in the sense that that is what they decided. And they decided this case 6-3. And what they essentially said is that although Louisiana had drawn that second district to comply with the Voting Rights Act under the prior interpretations of the Voting Rights Act that have been in place for more or less 60 years, the Voting Rights Act now effectively requires proof of intentional discrimination, not merely what is known as disparate impact discrimination. And therefore, since there wasn't evidence of that intentional racial discrimination, that second majority-minority district violates the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the net effect of which is to take the Voting Rights Act and turn it from a weapon against racial discrimination into a much less significant version of its prior self.
And James, walk us through that part of it. Why does this do so much to disempower the Voting Rights Act?
Well, what the court did here, Diane, and this was an anticipated ruling, to be clear. This has long been in the sights of Chief Justice Roberts, who, as far back as when he was an attorney in the White House counsel's office in the Reagan administration, long before becoming a judge, much less the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the court here today effectively constitutionalizes a color blindness principle almost completely, absent the showing of intention. And what that means is that even the remedies for racial discrimination, the remedies that are designed to prevent racial discrimination, are themselves unconstitutional violations of the 14th and 15th Amendments, the irony being that that is what the Voting Rights Act was passed in order to enforce.
And I want to bring in Devin Dwyer, who covers the Supreme Court. Devin, what sticks out to you from the language of this decision?
Yeah, really not a surprising decision, Diane, given this conservative Supreme Court's decision in history of wanting to roll back the Voting Rights Act, as James was talking about there. But this significantly raises the bar now for challenges to election maps as being discriminatory against minority voters. It's going to make it harder to sue in court. And as the dissent puts it in this case, written by Justice Elena Kagan, in her words, it is a completed demolition of the Voting Rights Act. Kagan goes on to describe, Diane, what she says, the consequences that will be far-reaching and grave, in her words. She says if other states follow Louisiana's lead, in her view, minority citizens residing in those states will no longer have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of those choice. That's a pretty significant statement coming from the three liberal justices in this case who have long insisted that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act needs to remain in place to protect against the types of discrimination that have been present in this country going back generations.
And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, any reaction from the White House on this yet?
Not yet, but certainly President Trump has been a huge supporter of efforts across the country to try and change and redistrict some of these districts ahead of the midterms to try and give Republicans a boost. And look, this decision means that ultimately you could have less minority representation in Congress and in state houses across the country. I suspect the president will have a positive review of this decision, given his efforts to try and change and try and support redistricting efforts, although that has been to some mixed results, we should say, over the last several months. It also comes, of course, as the president has been eager to put additional restrictions on voting writ large. He, of course, has been calling for this legislation requiring proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote. He's even gone so far as to say he'll somehow act unilaterally if Congress doesn't. And as the president has been taking steps to really undermine confidence in the voting system ahead of the midterms, but certainly he has been very supportive of these redistricting efforts across the country, all intended to give Republicans a boost in the midterms now just a few months away.
All right, Mary Bruce, James Sample, Devin Dwyer, thank you all.